problem.
Let's figure out whose car was.
Probably mine.
You got an alarm in your car or no?
I really hope it's not mine.
It's not
That wouldn't look
security
so
anymore.
good.
It's a new electric car saying that I want to be plugged in.
Our streets.
Okay, perfect. So it'd be just those two, Lisa?
I hereby call the regular meeting of Town of Gibsons Council to order at 3:31 p.m. April 22nd, 2025, and we're honored to be gathered on the traditional territories of the Skokomish Nation. We need to approve the agenda with the addition of a delegation from Staff Sergeant Jennifer Prunty on RCMP 2025 Quarter 1 statistics, which we'll do after our adoption of minutes. Moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor DeAndrade. All those in favor? The motion carries. And now we need to adopt those minutes for April the 8th, 2025. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Kroll. All those in favor? The motion carries. Welcome, Staff Sergeant Prunty. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. And again, my apologies for hijacking your meeting here. I completely messed up the time and thought that our 1 o'clock was 3 o'clock, so.
That one's just a little better to have you here.
Does it? Okay, good, good.
Fire chief here.
Oh, okay. So you have the stats in front of you there, and there's nothing glaringly of concern from my point of view, but I thought I'd go through it and just sort of look at some of the highlights with you and see if there's anything that as a community stands out for you that may need some additional attention. You know, I do note that the thefts from vehicles is up. It's up across the coast. So in general, that's sort of crimes of opportunity that are up across the coast. We've been doing media campaigns to talk about the 9 o'clock program, which is just at 9 o'clock in the evening and you're preparing for bed. Just one of the things to check is that you've also locked your car. Just because we are finding that some of these crimes of opportunity are just that. It's just opportunity that thieves are going up and down the road and just quite randomly trying to get into whatever they can. So, but outside of that, I'm not noticing a huge increase in anything for the town of Gibsons. And yeah, year over year, not much change either. You'll notice the stats are, we now have our analysts back at the district. So they are doing the stats for us. And so she's gone back to the reporting of Q1 over the last 3 years, again, like we'd had before. Maybe I'll just quickly go through the sort of key points of the rest of the report and then come back if there's questions on the stats. So for staffing news, I am happy to say that we have all of our positions filled. We continue to struggle with some of the soft vacancies, and those are to be expected in any business. In terms of maternity, paternity, all happy news from our detachment. A couple of sick leaves, unfortunately, but a lot of maternity and paternity, and people coming back in the summer. So, the partnership with probation has been stronger this year as compared to last year, which is working out really well in terms of making sure that we're doing consistent checks on people that are on curfew conditions or any other relevant conditions that we can check compliance on. The foot and bike patrols continue. We have e-bikes that we use for the town of Gibsons because you have a couple of hills here. So those have been popular. And you'll see more of them throughout the summer as well. I'd also like to highlight our partnership with the Restorative Justice Program, which is stronger now than it had been in the past couple of years. I'm happy to say that I'm representing the RCMP on the board, and our communication has become so much better, and the referrals are starting to flow in that way, so that some of the less serious offenses or offenses that are better mitigated through a more personal approach through the restorative justice lens are being dealt with that way rather than through the criminal justice system. And yeah, those are the highlights from the report. Unless anybody has any questions?
Questions? Councillor D'Andrade.
Thank you, Mayor. I see, actually, when I look at bike thefts, in the Sunshine Coast was 600%, which obviously looks impressive, but it's just a matter of extra 6. But my question is this more focused on e-bikes now or any bike?
That's a good question, actually. So for the bikes, it is, again, it's strictly opportunity, so it's unlocked bikes. Sometimes it's bike parts, too. The batteries from e-bikes are quite popular. So, yeah, we do recommend that people remove the battery, even if they're locking their e-bikes up. Yeah.
Any other questions? No. Well, I don't have any either, so
No?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So we will now move back to our regularly scheduled agenda. We've got committee reports. Special committee, the whole meeting minutes would just be there for information. I don't think there's any, doesn't look like there's any recommendation from that. Except then there's a second, then there's a second point, the recommendation for the operating budget review, which is that staff be directed to finalize the financial plan of 2025 with a maximum 2025 municipal tax increase of 8%. That's our recommendation from Committee of the Whole. Moved by Councillor D'Andrade, seconded by Councillor Kroll. Any discussion of that? All those in favor? The motion carries. And now for administration reports, we're on to 5.1. We've got the 2024 draft audited financial statements to be presented by our Director of Finance.
Thank you, Mayor White. Yes, you've received a copy of the draft financial statements. There are no signatures on it yet, but we're asking council adopt the statements and then everyone's going to sign off. There weren't any unusual items that appeared, and '23 versus '24, nothing unusual came to our attention. In terms of the core statements, the statement of financial position, about 2/3 of the way down is something called net financial assets. And this statement is structured that you put all your financial assets first, and then you minus off everything that somebody has a claim to on the town, and you're hoping that your net financial assets will be positive. It's just the structure of this statement. It's not likely that the town would ever pay everything off at once. But if that were the case, there would be $1.8 million to the good. So for a public sector statement, it is really important that that number be positive. It's not necessary that it be growing increasingly bigger. And here you can see, well, it's $1,825,000 in '24, and it was $1,820,000 in 2023. So the town has kept it at the same level. That's the core takeaway from that statement. The next one up, and Mayor White, I won't be going through all the pages, just a couple of these. The statement of operations, that one's important because we look at total revenue versus total expenses. So the middle column is very important, and the annual surplus was $2.9 million. This statement can be pretty tricky because in the revenue part, there's a lot of money that comes in from senior government that we may not have done very much work with those grants, but it all gets represented as a revenue of 2024. And then down in the expenses, that is entirely different. I mean, all of the expenses there happened in '24. So we had an annual surplus of 2.9. We did have a little change on the revenues. We went from $17 million to $17 million. But there was a pickup in expenses. We went from a total of 12 in '23 to 14 in 2024. There's a lot more detail to be had on that for those who are interested on Schedule 3 and 4, the statement of operations by segment. There you can see a little bit more about, well, what would that $2 million change be driven by? And it turns out that a lot of it was non-labor. Costs were up $1.3 million in '24, and labor was up about $575,000 in 2024. My explanations on the labor front was that the town over a number of years has been adding positions. It takes the town time to actually increase the number of people, but in some of our mid-range level positions, that would represent about 4 people. And on the non-labor side, there are an awful lot of projects that got started, and we spend a lot of money on consulting engineers and other kinds of consultants to help us do those projects. And my understanding is that, yeah, that's what most of the non-labor change is about. And on the other core statements here, I didn't see anything of particular note in changes in net financial assets, statement of cash flows. The town is in a reasonably good position with its cash flow and investments. And in terms of the notes, not a lot to point out. There was a change, a new accounting policy for 2024, and that one was about stricter rules on when you recognize revenues earned. A department that was particularly impacted by that was planning and development. So there, what it was saying was, well, you can't just take in these development permit fees or these building permit fees and just call it revenue and move on. Have you actually finished the work you do through the development process or the building process? And to the extent you don't, you need to set that revenue aside and recognize it when you've actually done the work. So the net change on that was something in the magnitude of $100,000 139,000, where we've slowed down the recognition of revenue by that amount. That was the only accounting policy that changed. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Counselor Thompson?
Through you, Mayor, does that accounting policy change? That could go over more than 1 year, I suppose, then. It could carry through for a number of years.
It's our new way of doing things for a whole number of revenue-generating activities. There is a note in the statements in the accounting policy section, and it details all of our core revenues and how they get accounted for. So essentially, the regulators of financial reporting have said that, well, it's great that in the past we've covered off how to account for taxes and grants and those kinds of things, but there's a whole bunch of other operating revenues we haven't set you any guidance, and now we are. We want you to be more like the business sector in terms of how you recognize your income. So we definitely didn't lose any money. It's just we have to wait a while before we can say we've earned it.
Other questions? Seeing none, there is a recommendation there. The town draft audited financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2024 be approved as presented. Moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? The motion carries. And now we have a motion to close in accordance with sections 91L, and that's listed there, discussions with municipal officers and employees respecting municipal objectives, measures, and progress reports. And I'll move it. I'm looking, okay, moved, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? Motion carries.